Slinging seeds, sliding on into home, throwing heat, buddy, we're going, gone. If you gotta go down, you gotta go down, swinging, slinging seeds. It's America's favorite pastime. Come on, let's have a good time, slinging seeds. Yeah, we're just slinging seeds.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Slinging Seeds. I'm your host, Kyle Evans, and this week we decided to do something a little different as we dive back into some previous episodes and show you guys some advice. If there's one thing that we all value, it's good advice. So today we will go over some of the previous episodes where our players, former players, current players, players in college, giving advice to our athletes that watch the show so that they know how to attack college baseball, recruiting, whatever aspect we share today. In this first clip, we get to see an exciting moment between Evan Fry and Doug Adams as Evan shares how important it is to be healthy and lifting through the season.
So one of the things I do want to ask a follow-up on this is, and I've said this to you directly, this is nothing I haven't said to you directly or to other people behind your back. If I could put your work ethic in basically any player's body that I've ever coached, I would love to see what they can accomplish. Because I truly believe of all the players I've been around, I've never seen somebody get absolutely everything that's in them out the way you do. And it's something I've always respected. And I mean, and guys would gravitate to you when you were in high school because they're like, and I would always use you as an example, which probably wasn't fair to you as a 16, 17-year-old. But I mean, you see what Evan's doing. Don't tell me you want it when you're watching Evan and you're not doing the same. I always respected that at a high level. But the reason I ask this is because even now, like obviously, I know you're working 3 jobs right now in the summertime, trying to do what you got to do, but you're still in here basically every day. I still see you coming in here and putting up real weight, all that stuff. Tell me a little bit about the 12-month weightlifting, what you do in season, right? Why you're actually pitching. Because for me at this point, with where we are as a program, that is our biggest hiccup. Guys don't want to lift during the season. They don't, and then they start losing velocity. Then a college coach sees them and they say, well, I thought this guy was 86. Now he's 82. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about kind of your in-season plan and that stuff, because I'd really like our guys to hear it.
Yeah. You simply put, you have to lift in season. If you want a healthy body and you want a strong body and you want your body to perform at the highest level, like you have to be able to tap into the power that you're producing in the off season. And that's a huge thing that I've worked on at both of my schools. That I mean, we lift in season 3 to 4 times. We're lifting on the road, like this year at NKU, like we're going on the road, like we're lifting in their weight room. And it's like you have to. It's almost like, how would you expect to say you're, like if it was hitting? And my thing is like, if you never stepped in a batting cage and you were just expected to go out and perform on the weekends for a tournament or twice a week during a game, but you never stepped in a batting cage and took hacks, at month 2, right, you're not going to be as good at the plate. And when you think about it pitching wise, like people don't think about the weight room that way, but like that's what the weight room is. You can only throw so much. And it's like, if you want to perform at the level that you did in the off season, you have to be as strong and you have to be as mobile and you have to be as explosive during the season. And there's obviously a safe way to do that. And like, that's where guys like Juan come in. Like Juan will give you exactly what you need to do in the season. Like you just have to do it. And it's the same thing that I always come back to is like, I don't want to lift after, a long day of a game, or I don't want to lift the next day when my body's hurting. But like, what I really want to do is go out there the next weekend and perform at the highest level. So like, that's what, like, that has to be your motivator. It's like, if you don't want to get in the weight room, then when you go out on Friday to pitch, like, you can't expect that you're going to perform at your highest level because you didn't do what you were supposed to do in preparation. And preparation is everything. And especially for a pitcher in velocity, like, if you want to perform at a high level every single weekend, then you have to lift and you have to, maintain your mobility and you have to get your sprint work in. Like, these are all things that are musts. Like it's not just, oh, I'm putting in extra work. It's not extra work. Like it's maintenance. Like that's stuff that you have to do.
I remember when recording that episode how chilling it was to hear Evan and how he devotes his time to his training and keeping himself together. And in this next clip, we get to listen to Mason Sherrill and kind of him reflecting on what he thought about recruiting then to what he's realized now.
So, like you touched on competition. I was probably one of our last guys to commit,
Yeah.
and that's definitely pretty tough when all your teammates are committing to all these schools, and you don't really have the offers that you're hoping for. Like I remember Tyler Wilson coming into the facility, and Doug's like, "Oh, he's got his 10th or whatever letter from a D1 school. Like this guy's going D1." And everybody else just like, "Man, I wish that was me." And like I really was a D1 or bust kid, and I mean, I wasn't a D1 or bust. I mean, I'm sorry, I wasn't a D1 kid, like, which isn't a bad thing by any means. And there's a lot of people out there who have that mentality. But like I was saying, the competition thing, we had Drew O'Brien committed to ODU, we had Kent Reeser committed to U of N or UND, and like we had all these guys committed to these schools, and I was like, I think I'm as good as them. Like we play on the same team. Like I should be going to these levels, and so I, held off for a while. Like I had some, NAIA schools, some junior colleges, D3s reach out to me, and I just thought I was, too cool for those schools. Which, looking back at it, I was completely wrong. So yeah, I went after like what I thought was my best offer, my highest, most prestigious offer, I guess. I went to, committed to the University of Findlay, a D2 in, Northern Ohio, and I didn't fit there. It wasn't the place for me, and I found that out the hard way. If I would have just listened to people who were telling me that at the beginning, I maybe didn't make that mistake. But I ended up transferring to NAIA in Chicago, Olivet Nazarene, and I had the best 3 years of my college career there. We won a conference championship, went to the national tournament, like went to a regional down in Faulkner. And I started out as a pitcher, got my foot in the door there as a pitcher, and then eventually became like one of our starting outfielders. And from there, my senior year was COVID, so I graduated in May of 2020, but that year got canceled, so they gave us a year back, and I ended up making a grad transfer out to William Jessup in California, another NAIA school, a really good NAIA school. And like I believe my best years of baseball were at an NAIA level program, and not an NCAA program, and not a D2 or D1 especially. I never got that opportunity, but there's an opportunity out there for everyone, and any opportunity is an opportunity. Like there are not many people that go on from high school baseball that go play college baseball, so like go where you're wanted and go where you're gonna have fun. And if you're the last man on a D1 roster that doesn't win any games, is that gonna be fun for you? Are you gonna enjoy your time there? Or go play at maybe a smaller school where they value you, they want you to play, and you can go win a championship. Like that's gonna be more fun. When I was dogpiling, I wasn't thinking about am I at a Division 1 or am I at NAIA. I'm just thinking we just won a championship. We get to go to the national tournament. It didn't matter what division I was in. I still won a championship, and that's one of the coolest feelings. There's nothing like dogpiling, especially with the guys that you play the sport with. So.
Yeah.
It was nice to hear Mason's humility through his recruiting experience, going from the mindset that he originally had into the mindset that he's grown now as a coach. Moving into these next couple of clips, we're going to get to see Ben Zink's overview on recruiting and kind of how it went in the beginning, and then we'll transition later into what he feels now.
What would your advice be to that high school kid who's going through that same process, stressed out, all those things?
I think my biggest word of advice, I think, is you really do have to trust your gut. The biggest school, the most flashy school is not going to always, it might be, but it's most of the time it's not going to be the best fit for you. You have to figure out what your life is going to be like once you're on campus. What are your classes going to be like? Where are you going to be living? Are you going to be in dorms? Are you going to be in apartments? Are you going to have access to a weight room? What's the food situation going to look like? There's so much that goes into it that's not baseball like specifically related that doesn't ever get talked about or and doesn't get asked by players. And so that piece is huge, along with like figuring out like one of I think the the biggest tools that a player can use is to just send a DM to one of the current players. Ask a player, especially like if you can find a player that hasn't really played much, and ask them like, hey, what's your experience been? Or if you can get them on the phone, like and be like, hey, like so like, tell me a little bit about the program. Or ask a coach to hook you up with a player to have a conversation with them. You got to understand like a decision like committing to whatever school is a decision that is going to define the next 4, 5, potentially 6 years of your life. So it's important that every stone is unturned. You know as much as you possibly can about the program before. So you don't. The last thing you want is to be surprised when you go into some place and it's absolutely nothing like you expected it to be. I think that's one thing I can safely say that I'm the happiest about my recruiting is that like I kind of knew exactly what I was getting into with Wright State. I think one, just because I asked a lot of questions, and two, just because the coaches were open and honest with me. Um, and so, yeah, the last thing you want to do is be left surprised once you step on campus and the coaches are nothing like you expected, the players are nothing like you expected, the program, the school, it's all completely different than what was advertised. That's really like a nightmare scenario that a lot of players go through every single year. It's a huge reason I think why the transfer portal is so big now.
Now we transition into Ben's most recent episode where he weighs in a little bit more on recruiting now that he's gone through the transfer portal and ended up at Ashland.
Yeah, I think that when I was recruited in high school, things moved a lot more slowly. There's a lot more time to make decisions just because, you know, you had, 4 or 5 years to make that decision. Really, if you wanted to wait that long. For me, my recruiting process, started when I was literally just entering like my freshman year of high school was when I first started talking to college coaches. Um, so, in that side, it was less stressful because, I had a lot of time to work with. However, the downside of that is you're talking to a 14 or 15-year-old kid. And, no matter how smart or mature you are at that age, you
Yep.
lack life experience, and it's just tough to make a decision that's going to last until you're 22 or 23 years old when you're 14 or 15. So that obviously made it a lot more difficult because your parents are freaking out because you're a 15-year-old who hasn't even really started much high school baseball, and you're already making decisions that are going to decide where you get your education and where you're going to live, and the people that you're going to meet. There's so much that goes into it. I think the downside of the way it is now is there's a very kind of little amount of time that you kind of have to do this process. So I think if I was to pick one that feels better, it's the way it is right now, just because you know kids are older and more mature, and they kind of have time to just still be kids and play baseball.
Yeah, that's
without
wholesome.
the stress
I like that.
without the stress of having to figure out where in the world you're going to go play college baseball at.
Isn't it crazy how things change? In this next clip, we listen to Stevie Doty and his advice for freshmen and trying to set their foundation and get ready for recruiting and their future in college.
You have all the time in the world to live your life. Don't give up. There's been multiple times throughout those 5, 6 years of my life that I'm like, is this really what I want to do? Like, you're gonna have to handle adversity, and if you can't, you're never gonna go where you want to go in sports. That's not just baseball. That's any sports, because baseball's a game of failure. It's the only sport that you fail more than you succeed, and that's something that it was hard to get through my head when I was younger because like I would say 10U, 13U, I was just so I don't even want to like give myself credit, but we were like there was kids out there that were hitting 700, 800, you know. But once you got older and you're starting to face kids that are catching up to you, and it really sucked because I remember there was one time my dad looked at me and he was like, "These kids are catching up to you, dude. Like you gotta start doing something." Because to be honest with you, I didn't touch the weight room at not even a single time until junior year. Like my brother was in the weight room before I was, and which sucked. I think I could have it would I would have been better off if I did start in the weight room when I was at an earlier age. But also I would say is don't stress on yourself about where you're gonna get recruited to. Because if it's meant to be, if the game wants you to be where you're supposed to be, it'll get you there. Whether that's going to play D3 and then go to D1, D2, or JUCO to D1, or you're really good D1 out of high school, or it doesn't matter. God always has a plan for where you're gonna go, and I would kind of just like I said earlier, be patient and just trust the process, really.
Words from a JUCO bandit himself. Speaking of JUCO bandits, we have a couple other guys that were in junior college ball this past season and are going back for their sophomore year. Caleb Obi and Dylan Alleman from Tri-C. In this clip with those guys, we are going to talk about their experience within the JUCO ranks.
So tell us a little bit about the JUCO experience.
JUCO's, it's what they say. It's very, very, very hard. But I feel like when you get used to it, you fall into love because you're just out there grinding with your teammates, which you're really close with. Some of the stuff you're like, oh, my body's not going to recover from that. And then you'll be back to normal after like 2 weeks of it. You're like, okay, let's do more. Let's go after it.
So what about you, Dylan? Any stories for the JUCO bandit?
I mean, the most memorable one would be shoveling the field with all the guys, in order to practice to get ready for North Carolina. So we spent 2 evenings shoveling the field, and it was brutal. It was cold, and my back hurt.
Cold. Anything you can think of.
But we had to get it done, so there's that.
It's part of the JUCO life.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
You gotta do what you gotta do. In this next clip, we have Colton Mullenkamp, Josh Bevan, and Grady Combs stopped in before they leave for college to talk about their experience with recruiting and what messages they would give to themselves if they can do it all over again.
If you could go back and talk to eighth grade you or freshman you, what advice would you give to yourself about the recruiting process and what it takes to get to where you are now?
I'd tell myself like to trust the process. Like don't think it's going too slow. Don't think it's just gonna happen in like a snap of a finger. Like, take your time, trust the process, and trust your coaches.
Mine, I've heard this for the past 4 years now, that I need to take the weight room and nutrition seriously. I'm still not the greatest at it, and I feel like it obviously does make a difference. So yeah, I would have just told myself to seriously take it serious and get into a habit, get into a groove, and figure it out early.
I would definitely talk about nutrition because, I mean, I grew into my body a little bit more, but I still could do better with it. I don't know. I would definitely like focus on that weight room and nutrition stuff for sure. So
We are wishing those three the best of luck as they have landed on their campuses here recently and have started their classes and practices and whatnot. In this next clip, we get to see one of their former coaches, Corey Arnold, and he talks about his experience in recruiting as well.
You had some recruiting success, right? Because you could obviously really hit one of the best inbox guys. I mean, obviously the knees, the back became an issue, and you didn't get to be the guy we all expected you to be in college. So tell us a little bit about the recruiting process and what you learned going through that, and then you obviously settled on Earlham.
Yeah, I mean, it was different. I think I have a bit of a different story from a lot of guys, because, at least a lot of the guys that we've helped get recruited are underweight, undersized. If they're not a D1 guy, that's a lot of the times the conversation. where I was opposite. I was a big guy, strong guy, could not run, didn't field real well, which is so funny because that's like my favorite things to coach are base running and fielding. Um, but like, I remember there was a certain school that, probably would have been my most prestigious offer. I think you know the one I'm talking about. They're like, yeah, he would only DH, there's no real future here because he's not a left-handed first baseman. Um, and then there was a lot of other schools that, just like I went on a couple visits, they just didn't work out. Like one was to downtown Detroit. But ultimately with Earlham, like Doug said, I had injuries. Um, the baseball side, beautiful. Great field, great program tradition. Um, really liked what I had with the coaching staff there at the time. And ultimately, my dad's like hiring manager at his company, like he sent like kind of the final list of schools to her, and she's like, "Yeah, this place I'd hire a college kid out of." So that was a big factor in my decision too. The academic side of it.
While we're on the topic of 2025 class, we see another clip from another 2025 grad, Joey Frisk, who's now at Tri-C. Joey, in this clip, kind of has some humility as well and takes it upon himself to reflect and remind athletes to become more coachable at a younger age.
If you could go back and talk to 15U Joey, right, about what you would do different in your journey, what is something that you would tell yourself? What would you tell yourself at 15 that you wish you knew then?
Probably not to be so cocky, because I thought I was the best player around. I wasn't. But I mean, not having that mindset that you're the best player around isn't bad. But like, I was just like neglecting people around me. Like, if there's a dude in the cage swinging, I'd be like, whatever. And then, I mean, that's probably why I don't hit good now. So probably, yeah. So probably learn from others, because I didn't really start like paying attention to other people till I was sophomore, junior in high school.
So like just be more coachable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Lastly, we dive into one of my favorite clips from episode with Naaman Anderkin. Naaman talks about kind of the ups and downs he had in high school baseball and how he overcame those obstacles.
What would you say to a high school kid that goes through that now as a freshman and us not getting the opportunities he exactly wants?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that guy with what you know now?
Dude, with what I know now, that was crazy. Cause I remember I hated Doug Adams, my freshman year. But what you don't realize is you go from being like the biggest dog, right, and then you start playing with kids who are 4 years older than you. They're gonna be better than you, and that's just kind of how it is. But you got to literally just work in the darkness until your time does come, and that's when you got to take advantage of it. Because it was kind of one of those things where I thought I was good, and then when I got my opportunity, I was awful. I wasn't ready for that opportunity, even though I wanted that opportunity so bad. I wasn't prepared for that. So I think the biggest thing is you got to be ready for that moment, because when that moment comes calling and you're not ready, you're probably not going to get another one after that. So you really just need to focus on being your best self, even if you're not on the field, so that way when you are on the field, you're ready for anything that comes at you.
That about wraps up our time and our reflections on the recent players that we've had on over the past season. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And to never miss a notification on our social media accounts, we are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
It's America's favorite pastime. Come on, let's have a good time. Slinging seeds. Yeah, we're just slinging seeds.